This, I can tell immediately when somebody doesn't actually understand creative finance and the importance of sub 2 disclosures to the seller. Everybody, can I teach everybody something real fast? Getting the seller to acknowledge all the disclosures of a creative finance deal is actual hard work. And the wholesalers that choose not to do that are the ones that give sub 2 a bad name. Welcome to real estate. If it's not in the freaking paperwork, you are screwed.
If I pull out a sub 2 contract that I have in front of me to sign right now, would you redo it?
Would I redo it?
Would you look at it?
Sure, yeah. Okay, so you're buying an assignment.
Correct. So I'll pay the assignment fee.
Okay, cool. Is it one of my students?
I don't know. You tell me.
No, this is not my contract. I can already tell you this contract.
In what way?
It's a 3-page contract on a sub 2 deal.
Right.
There's no way the seller, and it's not even a creative finance transaction. Purchase price, see term 1. Okay,
Right.
great, got it.
Yep.
So they basically filled out the sub 2 deal here.
Correct.
Earnest money, close of escrow, as is purchase, right to cancel. Okay, great. This is great. I love this. Okay, so here's the problem. Yeah, it's a shit contract. Do you mind if I talk to everybody about this?
Sure.
Okay. Hey, everybody, can I teach everybody something real fast?
Yeah.
This is something really important. So, what's your name?
Greg.
Greg has an assignment for a sub 2 deal. Okay, and he asked me to look at the paperwork and tell me if he's doing anything wrong. This, I can tell immediately when somebody doesn't actually understand creative finance and the importance of sub 2 disclosures to the seller. The person who wrote this contract and then is assigning it to you has not disclosed multiple things to the seller. Okay, this is the entirety of your contract, right? So you've got a 3-page contract. Does a 3-page contract in a creative finance deal sound appropriate? It's not. It should be closer to 9. Why? What are we disclosing to a seller when we buy on sub 2? Everything, yes, but let's list some things. They have continued liability of the mortgage in their name. If that is not in the contract and that's not a disclosure, you'll have the seller come back to you in 2 years and sue you and say, you never told me that the mortgage was going to stay in my name. It's not nowhere in the contract that says that you're telling them that. Okay? Due on sale clause. There's nothing in here about how to handle the due on sale clause. So let's say that you get the due on sale clause, like I just told you, I had 2 last month. They do happen. Due on sale clause comes and you get a letter from the bank that says, we are accelerating the note. You have to pay us. You go, oh, no problem. I'm going to go back to the seller and do what I just told you, which is I'm going to deed the property back to the seller. I'm going to repurchase it on an executory contract. Does that seller even know who you are? These are not my students. They're obviously idiots. Okay? What they are is they are cash wholesalers using a cash wholesaling contract, and what their dumb are doing is they're replacing the purchase lingo and saying this is a sub 2 contract. This is not a sub 2 contract. They are going to put you in trouble because guess what they're doing? They're assigning all of the legal responsibility of this contract. They're assigning it to you. They're going to walk away with their assignment fee scot-free. What's their assignment fee?
It's like 15.
They're going to make $15,000 downloading somebody's free cash contract off of a website. Okay, this was not written by an attorney. These are addendums to extend escrow. So they couldn't find a buyer?
The person had it listed as a FSBO and they could not find a buyer.
You can fix this. This is the good thing. Okay. This is why creative finance gets a bad rap with agents, is because cash wholesalers that think they know how to do real estate are using contracts they shouldn't be using. This is a poor cash contract. Even if this was a wholesale contract, I would not use this contract. This contract is a piss poor wholesale contract. And so they took a piss poor wholesale contract, and the only thing they have about creative finance is literally this paragraph. Everything else is cash related. So let's go through this. It says it's an as-is purchase. Great. How does that pertain to creative finance? Inspection and right to cancel. Nothing about creative finance. Seller representations, buyer disclosures. None of this has anything to do with creative finance. Breach and remedies, notice to cure, discount, entire agreement, severability, waiver, attorney's fees, counterparts, marketing, utility information. Literally none of this on these 2 pages has anything about disclosures, okay? This has one little paragraph, and the paragraph says, the buyer will pay the difference for $15,000. Like, half of their paragraph about it being sub 2 is about how they're getting paid their assignment fee. Is this teaching you guys anything? Yes. Okay. And hopefully they see this video. You suck. Go hire an attorney. There is no prepayment penalty. Okay, why are they talking about in the whole sentence of the sub 2, there's 8 lines. Let's read it out loud and let's talk about if this seller is understanding what's my most famous saying? Buyers are liars, sellers are worse. Okay, you're going to get sellers in your career, even when you're doing traditional real estate. I'll tell you a deal I'm dealing with right now. I'm buying a mountain house for myself on a lake. I go, include the boats in the purchase, and we got it. We're good. Perfect. We write the purchase contract. You know what the seller does? He goes, okay, hey, just so you know, what do you want me to do about the dock? Because the dock wasn't included in the purchase. Seriously. Welcome to real estate. If it's not in the freaking paperwork, you are screwed. This is, and he's a Mormon guy, I'm Mormon too, but letter of the law. If it's not written in stone, a Mormon will go around you and they'll go, I didn't screw you, it wasn't in the paperwork. And guess what? He's right. But why would I buy the house with the boat and not the dock? That's some bullshit. Okay, sorry, it's Idaho. I know I'm not allowed to say Okay, so here's the terms, everything he has about Creative Finance. Here's what he says. This property is being purchased by the buyer subject to the existing mortgage for a price of $485,000. In lieu of the down payment, the buyer will pay the difference between the total, $15,000, between the loan balance, $470,000, and the purchase price of $485,000. Cool. So that means the seller has no equity. You're just taking over the balance of $470,000, which it won't be $470,000. It's going to be like some random weird thing when they do the loan payoff, right? Less any additional liens discovered through title search. Buyer shall purchase property subject to existing mortgage and make payments per the existing seller's mortgage for the remaining life of the loan in exchange for the deed. Payments for the first position mortgage note will be made by the buyer through a long-term escrow account or a third-party servicing company. There is no prepayment penalty. Awesome. Property insurance to remain on property under seller's name. This guy's seller's name, but paid for by buyer annually. Do you guys want insurance under the seller's name that you have to pay for? If there's an insurance claim, where does the check go to? Buyer will have to get homeowner's insurance in their name. Wait, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Buyer will have to get homeowner's insurance in their name as the buyer's policy does not cover their loss. What is he talking about? In the first sentence before that, he says, you have to keep insurance in the seller's name and you pay for it annually, but then you also have to get your own insurance to cover your losses. Okay. Buyer and seller agree that if the buyers are more than 35 days late on their mortgage payments, they will start the process to deed the property back to the seller, who is dead. This will be handled outside of long-term escrow and then cancel the long-term escrow account. Seller to provide existing mortgage payment and information to the buyer within 10 business days of acceptance. That's literally everything he has in his entire contract that he's assigning to you about Creative Finance. So he's not talking about, hey, there's a disclosure. For me, there's literally 4 pages of disclosures. I am in the business of buying your property and I'm making a profit. You have been talked to. You have not been coerced into this, blah, 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 blah. That's one disclosure. Another disclosure is I have control over your insurance. I have control over your impound account. I get a power of attorney over all of those things. I get a power of attorney over the mortgage. So what happens if the login changes? What happens if I have to call the bank for something? Do you have a power of attorney for these things? The answer is no. The guy's dead. So where's his family? Oh, his family's not available. Maybe it's going to be forced to go through probate. You might be buying a property from a dead person that the property is going to end up having to go through probate anyway. This wholesaler, whoever he is, I'm praying to God he's not one of my students, because there's about 25 things he's doing wrong here. Now, if the seller was alive, I think if I'm the seller, wouldn't I want to know that there's going to be a continued liability of this mortgage in my name? And then wouldn't I want to have an entire page showing exactly how you're going to overcome that, right? Now, you talk about defaulting. Now, this has nothing to do on you. I'm just educating everybody else. But it talks about what happens if you default, right? But how do you actually hold this accountable? Do you guys know what a contract actually is? A contract is nothing but a recipe sheet to bake cookies. Okay, and what do I mean by that? This contract does not get recorded against the property. Nobody will ever see this contract ever. Once the escrow is closed, this gets shredded, deleted, and it never existed. All it is you hand it to an escrow officer and go, here's the instructions on how to actually create the final closing documents that then get recorded against the county recorder's office. So if anything is in here talking about how to handle the due on sale clause or disclosures, those types of things, it needs to be written in the note and the deed of trust. So whoever's going to write this is going to say, you have to give them the property back in 35 days. But how? Are there the steps of how you're going to do that? Are you going to deed the property back to the seller? Does the seller now have control of that deed if the due on sale clause happens? Or is the seller contractually required to give you the deed back through an executory contract? I know some of this doesn't make sense to some people, but you know what I'm saying. So this should be 9 pages. He's missing 6 pages of disclosures to the seller. Literally, if I'm dealing with it right now and I'm a pretty savvy investor about a guy not including his dock, but he's including the boats, that's the kind of crap that will go on. And you know this. Anybody else been involved in real estate transactions where that happens, where you're just like, you've got to be joking me. Everything you think is going to go wrong will go wrong unless it's in writing. And so he's done the purchase contract incorrectly. He's used a cash contract and haphazardly filled it in because he's lazy. And then he's assigning the poor contract to you. So can it be fixed? It can be. If I were you, I would go to one of my students and say, can you work with me on this deal? Or go to this guy and go, I can't buy this deal, dude. I got too much liability coming back to me. Let's say that in 3 months, the due on sale clause happens to you. What are you going to do? The property has no equity. So what are you going to do? You're going to pay this guy 15 grand plus closing costs. You're into it $20,000. You're now just going to lose the house in 20,000 bucks because you can't go back and revert the due on sale clause. Does that make sense? The house might be a great house. Post Falls, Idaho, is that a good spot? Who's signing on the seller's behalf if they're dead?
That would be, I believe, the adult daughter.
Okay, so the adult daughter must be getting something in this transaction. She has to be. She getting part of the 15 grand?
I think she's getting another 10.
Okay, and that's coming from you. That's not in the contract.
Correct.
So how do we know that?
I think what they're trying to do, again, spelled out poorly. I just literally printed that off this evening because I
Right.
just got it. We're paying an additional amount. I think on one page it shows 526. I don't know if I printed that page or not. Oh, it's on this addendum.
Okay.
And so they're going to take part of the delta as the assignment fee, and then the other part.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Assignment contract, 526.
Right.
So here's what I would do. I would call the escrow company that you're doing the escrows open with and say, here are my concerns. How can we make sure that this seller has all their disclosures? It's not their job to give them disclosures. This is your ingredient sheet. You're telling them, bake these cookies, right? If your ingredients are bad, the end product's going to end up being bad as well. They're just going to do exactly what's on the ingredient sheet, nothing more, nothing less, because that's their job. So you can call them and go, hey, this is messed up. I need to get a power of attorney. That's not necessarily their job. This is also why we hire transaction coordinators. They can do that kind of stuff. There's so many bad things about this. They can all be fixed. It's not going to be fixed by those guys because they're going to go, oh, Pace doesn't know what he's talking about. Everybody will always say that. Will I give you a copy of my sub-2 contract? If you put a gun to my head, I would not give you one. You can do a deal with one of my students and they'll give you a copy of the contract. But the most important thing that you're missing here are all the disclosures. That's the main thing. And here's what will happen. Who's dealt with sellers in foreclosure? They will do anything to get paid or solve their problem. Is that right? And then what happens after 3 months later, 6 months later, 9 months later, after you've solved their problem? They come back and say, you lied to me. You took advantage of me. You guys ever had that?
Yeah, they want more money every time.
So that's what's going to happen here. Whatever's going on with this daughter, she's got a property that has what on it? A payment. She's got pain right now. It's coming out of the estate's account. And she's like, I don't want that money coming out of the account. Oh my gosh. But then when she sees you close escrow on this thing, the dust settles on her father's estate, she's going to come back and say, she'll call her attorney. We've got a student right now in Minnesota dealing with this. Ladies in foreclosure. Okay, check this out. This is going on in Minnesota right now. Ladies in foreclosure, a wholesaler who's not one of my students uses a stupid contract like this, doesn't disclose to the seller anything that they're doing. My student goes, Oh, I'm brand new. She didn't even look at our contract. She was literally in the community for like 24 hours. Buys a deal from somebody in the free Facebook group with a bad contract. This is literally happened. She sent me an email maybe 2 weeks ago. And she says, the seller's coming back to me and saying that I committed fraud and we got her to sign documents when she was under duress. She wasn't even the one that did the contract. She's just the one that was the assignee. You received the contract, and when you receive the contract, you get all the liability. So she now goes, what do I do? And I go, I'll get my attorney involved. We'll do the thing. I'll pay for it. It'll be a great learning lesson for the whole community, and my attorney will fix it and fight the whole thing and whatever else. But this is where that's headed. The seller says, this is what the seller says. If you give me $15,000 more, I'll let it go. I had a seller that had a VA loan I took over subject to. This was about 7 years ago. And I closed escrow on it. A year goes by. I get a call from their attorney. And their attorney says, who's your attorney? Who's your representation? I want to reach out to them. We're going to be filing suit. I'm like, for what? He said, you took advantage of a veteran. We're going to be calling the Fox News local station and talk about how you took advantage of a veteran. Blah, 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 blah. And I go, would you like a copy of my recording of the conversation? He's like, you recorded the conversation? You're not allowed to do that. I go, yeah, I am. It's a one-party state. Arizona's a one-party state. He goes, okay, yeah, send it over. I send it over. He sends me an email 15 minutes later, and he goes, we will not be filing suit. This is why I record every conversation. This is why the paperwork is so important, is because you'll get put in a situation from a wholesaler that doesn't really care. And this is an honest conversation. You guys have been in appointments with sellers and signed contracts, right? When you've got a seller that says yes to a contract, and you're in the heat of the moment, you don't want to sit there and spend an hour going through disclosures, right? Let's be honest. It's the worst feeling ever. You did all this work to get them to sign a contract, and now you're going to pull out 19 pages of paperwork. This is also why we hire transaction coordinators, because they get on a Zoom, they walk through, they're super nice, they keep them on. So I don't have to do that. I can get them to sign a basic contract. I leave, my transaction coordinator does all the addendums, the power of attorney, blah, 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 blah. But what happens like with this wholesaler, he doesn't want to go through all that stuff because it's hard work. Getting the seller to acknowledge all the disclosures of a creative finance deal is actual hard work. And the wholesalers that choose not to do that are the ones that give sub 2 a bad name. So when you have a broker say sub 2 is illegal, that's what they're referencing. They're referencing somebody that used an incorrect contract with no disclosures. I wouldn't say that's illegal. I would just say that that's not the right way to do it.
It's ripe for litigation.
That's a good one. That's good. It's ripe for litigation. You basically have just asked the seller, take money from me and come back to me in a year because I didn't do my job properly.
But I haven't signed anything yet.
Yeah, but I would go back to him and say, hey guys, this is what I looked at. I actually met with Pace. And Pace said, where's the disclosure for due on sale clause? What if the due on sale clause does happen? How do I get the seller to actually play nice with me and sign the deed back over to me so that I can do it on a land contract or a contract for deed or an agreement for sale, depending on the state? And they're going to go, oh, that's not a big deal. The seller will work with you. Don't worry about it. The seller will work with you. Seller doesn't even know you exist. And the seller doesn't know that they're getting $15,000. So what I teach my students is I teach my students to tell when they assign a sub 2 deal to a buyer, make sure your buyer and your seller they acknowledge each other and just say, hey, my partner is going to take over. I want to introduce you to my partner on the deal so that the buyer and the seller know each other after all the paperwork is signed. So you've got your assignment fee. Escrow knows you're going to make your 15 grand, but you and the seller should know each other before you close escrow on that deal. Because what if something happens? What if you get an email or a call from the bank or insurance thing or a blah, 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 or a problem with the insurance company calling saying, we're not going to replace this or whatever. And you're like, I need to make a call. You don't even know who the seller is. And then you're going to go to the wholesaler. Have you guys ever paid a contractor before they did the work and then asked them to come back and do the work? If you pay a wholesaler their assignment fee and you ask them to come back and fix a problem, you'll never get them to call you back. They're worse than contractors. They got their 15 grand, they're gone. People do what they're incentivized to do, if that makes sense. I'll buy the deal. You don't want to sell it to me, but here's what I would do. Me being me, I would call them and go, hey guys, your paperwork is absolute shit. I don't know who taught you how to do this. This is the ripe for litigation way to do it. I love that you said that. I'd still like to buy the deal. Don't mind paying you all the money, but we need to redo all this paperwork. The contract needs to be done with a creative finance contract written by an attorney that understands this stuff and needs to have all the addendums. And I personally want to walk the seller through those acknowledgments so I know on a recorded call. You know what my TCs do when we sign contracts? Recorded Zooms. Seller's face, TC's face, walk through the contract. Okay, here's the acknowledgement, here's the acknowledgement, here's the acknowledgement. That stays on the cloud. If a seller ever comes back, you guys deal with this all the time. Happens in this business. And it's not just real estate, it's human stuff. You know, I'm sure you guys have dealt with this where you're like, maybe you pay for a fishing guide and you go, oh no, that wasn't included. You told me over the phone that was, have you guys ever experienced that? Somebody promised you something verbally and then when it comes down to the act of them actually performing, you're like, dude, where's the such and such? Well, I don't see it on your paperwork. Dude, you told me over the phone. So it has nothing to do with real estate specifically, it's just human nature. But I would tell them, hey guys, let's still do the deal. I need somebody that knows what they're doing to fix your guys' paperwork. Let's get an attorney involved. Have an attorney do the escrow. Have the attorney do everything else. If they don't want to spend the money on learning it from the right person, have them go to an attorney and spend the same amount of money, $7,000 to $8,000 to do the same exact thing. Creative finance contracts, to do them right, will cost you $7,000 to $8,000 to get the right contracts. So have them go do that, and then they can do it the right way 100 different times. But there's no addendums, there's no instructions. You'll get ripe for litigation. So freaking good. I'm going to steal that. That's really smart.